Welcome, Yamhill County, to Speaking Frankly. I'm your host, Howie Harkema, and our tagline is, "And how we doin'?" Today I have Commissioner Casey Kulla for his 4th appearance on the show. Woo! Casey Kulla! Okay. Woo!
The crowd goes wild, or we go wild.
Yeah, we go wild, yes.
This is true, but this happens all the time. We go wild.
All the time.
Or we get sad, or, yeah.
All the above, yeah. So we're going to go right into it. We never can get through everything, so we'll do what we can here. So we're going to talk first about housing solutions and some of the meetings that you've been having for months now.
Yeah, you know, the housing solutions really came out of having Elise Yarnell, who's one of the newer Newburgh City Councilors, approach me because she really wanted Providence to take a role in case managing folks who are experiencing homelessness and are in either vehicular camping programs or in a particular location.
Right.
And then it really has blossomed into, I was trying to think, what is the purpose of it? And the thing I come back to is that it's a very informal meeting that allows for collaboration and problem solving among everybody in the county who's working on homelessness.
Right.
Do you think that's an accurate way to talk about it?
Many people from different areas of our county, all coming together to process what they're doing and see if there's some gaps. Yeah, definitely. And seeing, oh, you're working on that because you're farther along in one way or another. Oh, maybe we should pick that up too. Exactly. Yeah, so talk about really Providence just for a moment and what they're doing there at this point.
Right. So they started, Providence Newburgh started out with Elise's pushing, I think, hosting one person in their parking lot who was a medically fragile individual and also a patient at Providence.
Right.
And they said, you can live in this parking lot. We'll keep an eye on you. Check in with us daily and eat at the cafeteria. You know, it's a small project essentially, and you can't get too big because that would be crazy. But they said, oh, now we need to go past having somebody just in the parking lot, and they're working on developing the property adjacent to the hospital as a tiny home community for medically fragile individuals who are patients of Newburgh Providence. And I think that's such a great model. Like, look, we can house them here and we can keep a really close eye on them.
And it's a brilliant idea because they already owned the land. And so all they had to do was destroy an old home and bring in some tiny homes and set them up.
Yeah, and the city of Newburgh is working with them on you know, the water hookups to reduce the price, for example, and sewer. So they're keeping the cost of it low, recognizing that it's a small light on the land development that has a benefit to the whole community.
And most of the people that will be vetted in there are medically fragile.
Right.
And some of them have been sleeping in cars in the parking lot at Providence.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So the people who are vetting them in know them well already. So this is really brilliant.
Yeah,
and Rick Rogers is really brilliant and really trying to make some things happen in Newburgh.
Yeah, it feels like such an amazing combination that, you know, you got the person at Providence who also happens to be on the city council, working with the person who's the mayor who also happens to work for Habitat.
Right.
You know, like there's a real strong desire on the part of the city council and the city of Newburgh proper to solve the smaller challenges that they have and to keep things from exploding, essentially.
Exactly, and they're kind of adopting a car camping program throughout the city of other parking lots that could be utilized and requesting that parking lot, say Fred Meyer or et cetera, to make things happen for those who are really in need.
Yes.
So that's fantastic.
It's great. It's very great.
So let's talk about affordable housing, period, and housing first model. Because affordable housing seems to turn into this purchase item rather than a rental item.
Sure.
And there are so many people that are in poverty and below and marginalized that will never be able to purchase a property for $200,000.
Yeah.
But they would be able to maybe rent if it was like Section 8 type scenario where
Totally.
it's 30% of your income,
Right.
and you could afford that.
Right, exactly. I mean, I always try to remember that affordable housing, by definition, is housing that's affordable at 30% of one's income.
Right.
So it can be on any scale, but specifically you're asking about apartments, it sounds like, too.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that, in the city of McMinnville, there's a lot less space that's zoned high-density multifamily.
Yes.
That's in a situation where it can be developed without intense opposition from neighbors.
Exactly.
I mean, that's one of the unfortunate things about south of downtown neighborhood is that it's zoned high-density multifamily, but it's a single-family home neighborhood right now. Whereas in Newburgh, there's many parcels that are essentially undeveloped or are underdeveloped that are zoned high-density multifamily, and so there's an apartment boom, between what's being built and what's in building and what's in planning and permitting stages.
Right. Rick Rogers, the mayor of Newburgh, was speaking about a 250 apartment dwelling with affordable housing.
Yeah.
And man,
yeah,
that really helps.
There's even in a project that I only know about it. I know about it, but I don't know how far through the works it is. So funny. Like, well, can I say this? I don't know. That will be multi-tiered, so it'll be, this level of income is what they're built for, and then this level of income, and then this level of income.
Right.
And that's also a big project that's going to happen in Newburgh.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And let's, the mayor from Sheridan, is it?
The city manager.
Yes, city manager. Frank.
Yeah. Frank
he
Sheridan.
was talking about a 64-unit complex.
Right. Yeah. I was
where
going to say
veterans would have 10, and
we should divide. We should split affordable affordable housing and housing first together, because that's really what that Sheridan project is. As he's messaging it as commercial apartments, and it's right that those are commercial apartments is the project, but it was housing authority owned land and sold it to a developer who's developing apartments that Health and Human Services of the county is holding the master lease on.
Right.
And Housing Authority is reserving housing vouchers for it. So anybody could rent an apartment in it, and the apartment rentals, the county HHS through the Coordinated Care Organization and through other sources of state money is paying, I think it's $48,000 a month for 64 units. Right. And that's 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments, so there's going to be family possibilities even there. And those, that ends up having $500 to $1,100 a month apartments for that. And so those are, for many people, those are affordable. And they're also lower cost than the median in Oregon.
And 10 of them are being held for veterans.
10 are being held for veterans, and then I want to say that there is 40, maybe as many as 48 housing choice vouchers. Section 8. Right. Yeah. That are going to be reserved for the property. Man. It's super exciting.
Isn't that exciting?
Yes. And, the reason why it's merging affordable housing and housing first is that housing and urban development, they maintain that housing first is the model that works. Yes. And if you go to, I talk a lot with Jimmy Jones, the ED, the executive director at Mid-Willamette Valley Community Action Agency. Right. When we had a kind of an interim and missing EDs at YCAP here, I started talking to him just to learn more down in Marion and Polk County, and he has laid out their data for the hardest to house population. They set as a goal that they wanted to house the people who were costing the most. Sure, chronically homeless. Yes, yes. Those people who are in the emergency department all the time, who are getting checked on by the police department, right? Have paramedics going out to. They said, we are going to house them in this particular location and support them in that. And their data afterwards is 1 year after stable housing was achieved, it's something like 94% of people are still in housing. Right. Which represents an enormous savings to the system. But along those lines, we have data in Yamhill County now too. And I haven't pulled out the Silas Halloran-Steiner, the director of HHS, he presented the data really briefly. It's like, hey, this is a rough rough idea, but Yamhill County, we in a year and a half ago, we set aside some housing, and we're like, okay, we're going to house these folks also who are costing a lot.
Sure.
And because they were clients of HHS, we knew exactly how much had been spent in various areas for them, right? So house them, and then at the 1 year mark, and for some of them, some of them had been in housing for 1 year, some had only been in 6 months.
Sure.
So they were able to look at what's the reduced cost to the system, to all of us who we're all paying already for it.
Exactly.
For their care, for their
emergency visits,
for
all of it.
arresting them,
all
for their court visits. And he found that on average, so this is on a per month basis, because he couldn't do a whole year for some of them, because some of it had only been for 4 months. On a per month basis, it was like a 14-person population, maybe 18, $1,400 a month reduction in the cost of services going to them, simply because they were housed. And then they still had the same level of like case management
that
they
would
had
have
before.
To.
It's like, so it works, right?
So,
we have this little tiny example in our community of it working, and we have examples in Salem of it working.
So the tax savings is enormous when you extrapolate that over how many homeless people that are chronically homeless, and I call them survivalists because that's what they do. But yeah, I can well understand that. And part of the reason that the CCO was ever fashioned was to reduce the input of people being picked up by ambulances and taken to emergency rooms and all of that, and also for the medically fragile that didn't have Oregon Health Plan that are now on the Oregon Health Plan.
Right, that's a big part of it. Yeah, that's right.
So let's talk about the 5-person board of commissioners.
That sounds great. And then I realized number 9 for the camera here is what else is going on. So I want to make sure that we get to that one too.
We'll get there.
I don't have scheduled dates, but so 5-commissioner board. What we're at right now is Tuesday. We're going to have our second discussion about the language of a draft ordinance, and then once we approve it, possibly as early as Thursday. We'll do our first reading, and then 2 weeks later we have to do a second reading. That's just the formality
I understand
with ordinances. And then we'll sign it, and it'll go to the clerk's office. The county clerk will file it as a petition, a ballot measure for May of 2020, and then we can, people can vote on it or not. I'll probably do a little bit of campaigning for it.
I hope you do.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
And so everybody gets a chance to actually vote on this.
Yes.
And that's very cool.
Exactly.
And I know you've gone to every township and had meetings.
Yeah, and I've talked to county commissioners from other counties who have 5. In Clackamas County is a general law county, just like we are in Yamhill County, and they went to 5 commissioners. And I asked 2 of them. 2 of them were in a meeting with me, and it wasn't a public meeting because they can meet because it's not a quorum.
Right.
I asked them, what do you think about having 5 commissioners versus 3? And they looked at each other and like, well, this is my most important ally and my most important teacher. And they're completely different political perspectives, but they view each other as partners in guiding and leading the county.
Sure.
And I thought, how great. It's like the best endorsement ever for that.
That's awesome. And I see county commissioners as they go through the years becoming mentors to freshman county commissioners.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
That's really important.
Yeah.
Let's talk about climate change.
Okay.
And even though this won't air until Saturday night, tomorrow is the climate strike.
That's right.
Nationwide. And I know that you're really heavily involved in environmental issues, along with some good friends of mine.
Yep.
So let's talk about climate.
That sounds good. It was very hard to see the cap and trade bill die at the state legislature, and it's not because I have any love of carbon markets and the sale of credits that allow you to emit carbon or not.
Right.
But it was hard to see a good faith effort to reduce our carbon emissions and increase our carbon sequestration and help communities become more resilient, especially low-income communities and rural communities. It was hard to see that effort be gone with a negative, experience at the end of it.
Right.
Because I felt like nothing's going to happen here.
Well, the walkout really was unbelievable.
Yeah, it was really hard all around to watch it. But while that was happening, I've been working on, I held a bunch of listening sessions around climate change. I talked about it before during the campaign. And then I've sat down with, actually, Pat Evans.
Very well.
Pat and I have been working on, out of the listening sessions, the climate listening sessions, where I asked, what is the most urgent thing you want to have? And also, what do you find that you have in common? What do you love most about Yamhill County?
Right.
And I pooled all those answers to see what's the biggest, strongest commonality.
So what are the top three?
So what people said was that they valued the small town feel of Yamhill County, they valued the open space, and they valued the natural resources economy. And so I said, what do you think about working to make sure that those survive in the face of climate change?
Sure.
Just like real simple, small scale.
Right.
We're not going to have a carbon market in Yamhill County. We're not going to try to change people's behaviors by telling them what to do. We're going to say, here is a toolbox of things that we can all do as county governments, as managers of the roadways, as cities, as people, as farmers, as foresters, as landowners, as business owners. Here are things that we can all do to make our community more resilient in the face of longer extended droughts, in the face of higher fire risk, in the face of uneven water supply, and in the face of climate in-migration. Because that's one of the things that is the Oregon State University maintains the Climate Research Institute, and so they publish a forecast every year, and they update it on what different parts of Oregon are projected to experience. And so you have a forecast, like, okay, we'll likely be in this range for temperatures, we'll likely be in this range for drought, we'll likely be in this range for wildfire risk.
Sure.
But the thing that's totally unknown is how many people are going to move to Oregon from places that have become almost uninhabitable.
Exactly.
And so I feel like we talked about affordable housing and housing first and homelessness, and it makes me realize we need to be so on top of housing in the landscape that we already currently exist in, because we don't know how many people may come to our community.
Well, not this community, but I have done some research, and it's around 230 to 250,000 people that move to Oregon in a given year.
Sure.
So, I mean, if you extrapolate that out across the rural communities, the urban communities, our urban growth boundary hasn't changed in, I think it's 20 to 30 years.
Yeah, there's been a little bit, here and there.
Very little, though.
But certainly, and
and we have to grow.
And I think that we can be a lot more dense within what we have.
Yes.
I do think that that's very possible. And especially in McMinnville, there's areas that can be developed and can be taken into the urban growth boundary where people, frankly, don't want to be inside the urban growth boundary because their taxes will double.
Right. Talk about soil for a minute. Coming from a farmer's perspective, and the soil gets worse and worse every year, and we have to amend it more and more.
Okay.
And how do we do that without putting chemicals on it? How can we restore our soils?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what I would say is that a way to tell if a soil is degrading over time is one, if it's running away, because then it means that it's not being held together.
Sure.
Right? So it doesn't have soil structure. So if it's blowing away, that's soil that's degrading because it's just disappearing into dust. And if it's running away, it's also degrading.
Right.
And part of it is because it doesn't have soil structure. Our soils can get rained on all day and all night, and it goes in or it runs across it, but it doesn't pick up anything because it has soil structure.
Right.
And we're by no means perfect, but we spend a lot of time on the farm growing cover crops and working the cover crops in, and that's our primary source of fertility, right? And it's our source of carbon. It keeps the pH stable. We I've only done 2 soil tests, and one of them I didn't do, a renter did. In the lifetime of the farm, beginning and then so 14 years ago, and now 14 seasons ago, and pH is still just rock solid, and we haven't applied anything, and it's hilarious.
So it's just tilling in the cover crop.
Yeah, and that's for us. Admittedly, we have more. We have a long rotation, and a lot of other farmers can't do that commercially.
Right.
But a lot of people can also grow a cover crop in between. And, they can grow it in the alleys, or they can grow it in between their other crops.
I want to get to the last question. So
yes, but remember that. So I don't know if you saw this on Facebook. Did you all see this picture on Facebook? It's the coolest figure ever that I've ever seen in Science magazine. Which is, it was a graph by latitude of carbon above ground and carbon below ground. And at the 45th north parallel,
where we sit,
we have a little bit of above ground. We think we have a lot of above ground carbon stored, right? But it's a lot of it is below ground in roots, in long-term carbon storage, in the stuff that just breaks down really slowly. And so if we can be feeding the soil over and over and over again, year after year after year, growing a crop and working it in, we are going to see that carbon come out and go in, and it makes our soils better.
That's awesome.
Okay,
so let's talk about Yamhill County bridges and infrastructure.
Yeah. So we've known Yamhill County has 135 bridges that we maintain. We're responsible for. Right now, we have 33 bridges that are considered deficient in some way, and of them, more and more of those bridges, ODOT, Oregon Department of Transportation, inspects on a 2-year cycle. And when we get that bridge report, the new one, more and more bridges end up on the critical list.
Sure.
And critical repairs are ones that are defined as requiring a load reduction. So we have bridges in Yamhill County, little ones, that have gone from being unrestricted, anything can drive over it, to 3 tons overnight. And the 3 tons, our box truck, like our post-delivery truck, can't go across it. Makes it really hard to get around the county, and it's incredibly disruptive to people's lives. I mean, it's incredibly disruptive to farmers' lives.
Oh, boy.
But everybody else's lives, too. It's also can be unsafe because if you need a fire truck or an ambulance to go across it, you can't. You have to go around. So
so do they have alternate route maps?
Yeah, so we got a list from ODOT of all the bridges recently that had to be load rated, and then they said if you don't fix these by November 1st, they're closed. And that is devastating when you're scattered those around the county. But what we've learned is that if we dedicate, Public Works crew dedicates a bridge crew, people who know how to dry pilings, who know how to lift up spans, who know how to slip caps in, we can do the repairs fairly quickly, like a week once we get the parts ordered for it. The materials, because of their bridges, are pretty expensive. Like it's $5,000 for a beam, that kind of thing. But we've learned, because of emergency repairs, that sometimes your bridge crew could probably do something for $10,000, but when it's an emergency, you have to have somebody do it for $100,000.
Oh my goodness.
So if we can put out the fires, get bridges reopened across the county, and then really dedicate ourselves to restoring the function at each of these bridges that has some kind of deficiency, we are going to be in such a good place, because it means that if in event of a big one, like a subduction zone earthquake, our bridges will be fresh, they're small, we can reroute traffic off of the really big bridges that are collapsed, the ones that are old and that ODOT hasn't gotten to. It ends up making the county roads like lifelines for our community.
And they would be.
Yeah, they really will. But what it'll require is that we pave fewer roads over the next couple of years.
So we have 5 minutes left. Sustainable economic development. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. Man. Well, I think that sustainable economic development requires environmental sustainability and social sustainability. That's kind of my, the triumvirate, right? You have to have all 3 of them in order to have something be sustainable. So when somebody proposes a new thing in the county, a new business, or they want to bring a business into the county, or they say, hey, what about this thing? We should do this. I always, just as a habit, go, how is it going to be for the people in Yamhill County?
Right.
Like, is it going to benefit the people here who are already here? Is it going to benefit the environment? This is our livelihood, but it's also the ground upon which we stand.
Exactly.
I mean, literally, we have to take care of it. So that's what I go through.
Yeah, the wheels are turning
every time. Like, And actually, you had on here hemp, and I think that's
right. Talk about
it is
that.
a fascinating one because hemp is one of those value-added products
Boy, howdy.
that we have around here, and is literally growing in acreage every year. Just like the wine industry, we take ground that's steep. It doesn't have a lot of fertility in it. You put grapes on it, you develop an industry over time, and you have something where the product that leaves our county, either in somebody's hand or on a truck, is really high value. And so what I'd love to see an industry like hemp be able to do the same thing.
Exactly, and there's a lot of restrictions, but things are changing.
Yeah, and there's just a lot of...
and Woody Harrelson was huge into making this a very marketable product.
Okay.
So
nice.
I mean,
I gotta thank Mitch McConnell too. I don't usually think really good, warm thoughts for him, but he and Senators Wyden and Merkley worked pretty hard to make hemp. To add it to the Farm Bill so that you can get crop insurance, you can sell the plant products across state lines. Soon you'll be able to bank with it. And for him, it's because Kentucky is prime, weed growing habitat.
Absolutely.
But for us, Yamhill County and Western Oregon, especially irrigated Western Oregon, can grow a much higher yield even than Kentucky. Like, we are a perfect place to grow it.
And the products that can be made from this is unbelievable.
A myriad products.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
So we used to, in the U.S.,
yes.
grow it long, long ago. So what else are you working on?
Yeah, so we talked about this a little bit. One thing that I felt very comfortable, realized I feel really comfortable with, is working with people and communicating with them when they are dead set on being differently minded about something than me,
sure.
who are mad. And I'm really comfortable at finding that common ground around things while still respecting that we have
sure.
differences, right? So I held the town hall on homelessness, right?
Right.
The question was, what should the county's role be in addressing homelessness? So I'm going to do at least a couple more. One specifically around climate change, and
Good.
the question will be, what should the county's role be in addressing climate change? Mm-hmm. And I'm fine with people saying that climate change isn't real, but I will ask them back in a public setting, like, what things would you like the county to do to make our environment more resilient?
Right.
Like, we can talk about the same things and use different words, and it's okay.
And we don't all have to get along and don't have to have a commonality either.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of giving people options,
right.
And that's exactly what you do in these town halls.
Oh, yeah. And another one that I'm very excited about, because I know that there are thoughts out there that people don't necessarily feel like voicing in a public setting yet, but right. I hope to bring this out, is around gun violence and gun safety.
Sure.
And I'm not looking, like, we don't need to take people's guns away in
right.
order to have a place that's safer.
Right.
And so I'm excited about having a conversation where lots of people can bring their ideas. I talk to gunsmiths all the time. This is an odd thing, and they're like, there are things we can do to have a safer society without confiscating, without trampling on the Second Amendment. And I'm excited about that, having that conversation.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So thank you for being on again. Look at that, we did it.
18 seconds.
17 seconds
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And thank you for watching today.
Yeah.
And if you want to come to one of Casey's town halls, he always
get
posts
updated.
all of the information on his Facebook page, which is Commissioner Casey Kulla.
Yeah.
And so anytime that you want to know what's going on with Casey Kulla, you can go there and find out.
Communicate with me.
Yes.
I reply to everybody, so...
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you
I really
so
appreciate
much.
it.
And thanks for watching today.
Yeah.
you.